A very good evening to you and welcome to Unfiltered. I'm Onati Bagyashe, standing in for Aldrin Sampier tonight. Well, today marks a very important milestone in the history of South Africa. 20 years today, the late former President Nelson Mandela was unanimously elected by the National Assembly as the first president of the democratic South Africa, a black president. For the citizens, it was a new dawn. Now, the event carried with it promises of a new country where there is racial harmony, access to health care, jobs, and many other things that come with democracy, right? Well, the question is, does South Africa today reflect a country that we all yearned for back then? And join us as we ask you this pertinent question tonight. What will it take for political power to translate into economic freedom? Now, to further this discussion, we are going to be welcoming political analyst Moeletsi Mbeki, as well as Laibon Mabasa, who is the founder and former president of Azanian People's Organization, AZAPO. Remember to join in this discussion via our social media platforms using @Unfiltered SABC for Twitter and Unfiltered SABC for Facebook. But before we continue our discussion, let's take a look at this clip of former President Nelson Mandela.
We therefore welcome recent developments that provide for the creation of community banks. We would also like to encourage the greater participation of established financial institutions in the important area of black economic empowerment and support for the development of small and medium business. The latter two areas of economic activity will receive the greatest attention of the government because of their importance in deracializing and democratizing the economy and creating the jobs which our people need.
Well, just to remind you, our conversation today, what will it take for political power to translate into economic emancipation as we reflect on this very important day in our history? In studio, I'm joined by Ubabutiyani Laibon Mabasa, and on video, I am joined by political analyst Moeletsi Mbeki. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time. Mr. Mabasa, I'd like to start with you. Now, just taking us back to 1994, you know, that very important year. Of course, tomorrow marking the 28th anniversary of the inauguration of our first democratically elected President Utatu Mandela. You know, this, of course, was the first non-racial general elections, and it marked a significant time, you know, in our history. But you, as AZAPO, chose not to participate in that crucial election. Talk to us about the reasons behind that.
I was a member of AZAPO, also its founder. And we viewed the processes that led to April 27 and ultimately the inauguration of President Mandela as processes that were very deceitful to the majority of black people. Because in reality, I think John Pilger, in his book, made there's a chapter where he says, in April 27, 1994, apartheid did not die. That is the economy, the land and everything remained in the same hands it had been before those days. And this was largely because of how the CODESA project guaranteed the continuation of white rule, even if the new name is black rule, because in reality, our people still found themselves wherever they were staying. If they were staying in Zola, they still found themselves in those despicable conditions in Soweto, in Atteridgeville, in KwaMashu, literally everywhere. The change that we're talking about People have not seen it, but they have actually heard about it.
And of course, the land issue also being a pertinent reason behind that, and we'll discuss that in a moment. Mr. Mbeki, I'd like to bring you into the conversation now. You know, by all accounts, the installation of a black president at that time and a majority black government, you know, was a significant progress for this country. But just going into the conversation of today, you know, how has this developed, changed the economic condition of the black majority 28 years on?
Well, there's been huge changes in the condition of the black population. We have a huge black middle class that did not exist before 1994. We have a black billionaire president of South Africa, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, who I'm told is a billionaire. We have black billionaires like Patrice Motsepe, and a few months ago, the Minister of Finance revealed that there are more than 29,000 public servants who earn more than R1 million a year. Obviously, most of them black. So there's been huge improvement in the life of the black middle class and the black elite, enormous improvements from where they were in 1990. So it's not true that there's been no improvement for the black population. There's been, especially for the black middle class.
Talking about, you know, the improvements, and of course we can't talk about Utatu Nelson Mandela without bringing in the ANC. You know, just looking at this history and of course his legacy, do you think that Utatu Nelson Mandela will be proud of the ANC's record in the area of economic transformation?
Well, I can't speak for Mandela. He's not here. So I wouldn't pretend to know what he would. I can speak for myself, but I can speak for Mandela. Levels of confidence in the ANC, I think, are a surprise to me, and I'm sure there will be a surprise to Mandela and to many of his comrades who were sentenced to life imprisonment. But I can't pretend to know what Mandela would think about the ANC's economic policies. I can tell you my views about the ANC's economic policies.
I'd like to know that. Babu Mabasa, let me bring you in on the land issue, and then we're going to start interrogating what is the condition of South Africa at this particular moment. Now, one of the reasons that you chose not to participate in that crucial election in 1994 was the land question. You know, so looking back now, do you think that the current government has effectively addressed the land question, especially if you have to consider just how many people, and when I say people, I'm talking about black people, own land in this country?
I laugh because there are some stuff that is what do you call it?
Tweeters, social
not
media?
Tweeters. What becomes common for everybody to discuss, and trending. Oh, that's the term, trending. And people make a joke that, you know, everybody must wash next to his place, because almost everywhere there are these big holes that have been, the streets of South Africa, you can actually turn them. So, but you have your own. In our country today, reality is that one, they say, as a sign of development, public transport is a reality. Are you aware that our children have never seen a train? People literally, they don't only vandalize a station. They actually even carry out the rail line, sometimes up to 20 kilometers of the railway line is not there. And generally, when you look, it's so difficult to want to talk about the land question without talking about the immediate things that face our people. The UNDP says most South Africans are actually worse off than they've ever been under the apartheid regime. Unemployment is crazy. It's a very difficult thing. Of course, there was an agreement in CODESA that they will not talk about land. When they brought in a property clause, they were saying, umkuku right waku. Legally, it's yours. But also, you do not challenge those who have these big tracts of land, because CODESA made sure that those things become legally theirs. You remember there was lots of talk of willing seller, willing buyer,
yes.
And we made a joke and say,
I'd like you to hold those thoughts that Mabasa, we will continue to discuss them and also interrogate the state of affairs in this country at this present moment. But let's take a quick break and we'll be back straight after this. You're watching Unfiltered with me, Unathi Pagyashe. Welcome back. You're watching Unfiltered with me, Unathi Pagyashe. Our question to you tonight: what will it take for political power to translate into economic freedom? I'm joined by my two guests, political analyst Mr. Mulwetsi Mbeki, who is joining us via our video link, as well as in studio I'm joined by Utatu Laibon Mabasa, who is the founder and former president of AZAPO. Mr. Mbeki, perhaps let me go back to you and pose the very question we are posing to our viewers tonight. And what will it take for political power to translate into economic emancipation? I mean, you know, depending on who you are asking today in terms of experts, they'll tell you that we are headed towards a failing state. Some are actually, you know, dare to say that, you know, it actually is heading, this country is actually heading to collapse. You only have to look at the AG reports. You only have to look at what the Institute of Risk Management is saying currently, also the Zondo Commission into state capture, etc. So how would you then answer that question?
Well, I can we are living in society. In a capitalist society, the wealth belongs to a few people. The ownership of is all held by a few individuals, by a few couples. That's the society that we chose under our constitution. That's what we all agree, that South Africa is a capitalist society, and that the existing that way would continue places they would do well, and then that new with opportunities at least to him. So the notion that is economic liberty to happen curriculum is, and people don't understand. They don't understand that concept. They don't know it's happening enough.
All right. Sorry, Darumbeki, your sound is, unfortunately, I think it's a signal problem that we are having very difficulty hearing you, but we'll definitely come back to you as we try and establish that line. But perhaps, Dr. Mabaso, let me bring you into this conversation. You know, at the time when we had, you know, this post, of course, our democracy, when we, in 1994, just looking back 28 years on, you know, that question of, you know, what will it take for political power to translate into economic emancipation, especially if you look at the current leadership, the current government. Do we have the kind of leadership that will essentially lead us to the emancipation that we seek, particularly if you listen to what experts are saying in terms of where the state is going?
This state is going in the direction it had chosen at the negotiation. Wampek is right to say it's a capitalist setup, and the ruling party decided that that is the route they are choosing, which means when they choose that route, they are willingly saying that everything, including the land, should only belong to a few, and the overwhelming majority would have nothing. Looking at what is happening today, we still get congratulatory notes that our leadership is doing very well. When President Ramaphosa goes overseas, he's being congratulated and so on. But here at home, he lives a nightmare of unfulfilled dreams, a nightmare of even unfulfilled possibilities. I don't talk about people having won. Power was not conquered political power was not conquered in 1994. We went into an arrangement that said it's okay. If you remember very well, the National Party held a referendum to say, here's a new situation, how do we deal with it? And FW and others made their promises, and at the end of the negotiations, they were able to go to the white constituency and say, I think we have done well. And they have done very well. Black people went into negotiation, and if we start with the negotiation, the late OR had to ask Mandela when he heard that he is negotiating, because even the ANC did not know that the negotiation had started. And we are told here, OR wrote a letter and say, when Zantoni, what actually is happening. So it was an unmandated negotiation whose terms were extremely confusing. You are right, there was no negotiation about the land, there was no negotiation about the economy. It was only the promise that if the country does well, there will be a trickle-down effect and everybody would get okay. But I remember the words of the late Joe Slovo saying, in this country, we don't need a trickle-down. We don't need a trickle-down effect. We need an avalanche. Because the disparities are so huge, and you cannot deal with them piecemeal. He is right, Tatem Mbeki is right to say we need a change of system. We need a change of a framework. The present framework isn't going to do any better at any given time. We'll just get worse and worse and worse. And I'm not afraid to say this is a failed state. I will not say we are heading there. Actually, it's a failed state. You look at the security. We look at things where our people, those who were in exile, they say there were 30,000 of them, 30,000 people in exile, and the reward for them staying in other countries is close to 4 or 5 million. And everybody claims, we're in South Africa because the ANC, the PAC, the BCM was staying in our country. But we're talking about, for God's sake, about 30,000 people. Now, how does it translate to the millions we have here in the country? You've been
referencing Mr. Mbeki, and I'm going to bring him back in. Mr. Mbeki, in 2018, President Cyril Ramaphosa pledged to effect widespread structural reforms when he took power at that particular time. Now, we've always heard that when it comes to things that we put on paper as South Africa, including our constitution, we are very good at that. But when it comes to implementation, we fail dismally. Dr. Mabasa says we are not a failing state. In fact, we are a failed state. Mr. Mbeki, perhaps you can unmute. All right, we'll come back to Mbeki. So, Mr. Mabasa, I mean, it's, one of the things that we do agree on is that, since 1994, there have been some improvements in this country. But you saying that, in fact, this country has reached a point of no return is concerning, particularly if you look at the current state of affairs when we talk about unemployment, you know, when we talk about the land issue, and also if you had to look at the Zondo report. So one begs to ask, how do we get out of this abyss?
The first thing we should say, it wasn't ordained by God and thrown at us. The Mandela effect in 1994 was so huge that it won the ANC the overwhelming majority, and also created the kind of arrogance that they did not even respect those who put them in power. Today, we don't want to talk about corruption, because the corruption in this country is crazy. You go and borrow $500 billion at the IMF World Bank, and you steal it even before it lands on the table. When you open your eyes, everything is gone. I think we have reached a point where the arrogance, the unwillingness to account and take responsibility, the rate of crime, and an unbelievable situation. How do we have almost 74.9% of able-bodied youth unemployed? And if you translate that to black youth, it's much, much higher than that 74.9. And I don't think the present ruling party has an idea as to what they should do now. And I think maybe it's time they retire and take some fresh air. Maybe we would have a different situation. I sincerely don't think they know.
You talk about accountability. I'd like to know where Azapo plays a role in that question, but I will.
Yeah,
let's come back to
absolutely.
it. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be back straight after this. Don't go away. Welcome back. While you're watching Unfiltered with me, Unathi Bhagyashe. Well, our question to you tonight, what will it take for political power to translate into economic freedom? Let's quickly look at some of your responses. We've run out of time, but we'll take a quick look. Rufilwe Rantlauku says political power will never translate into economic emancipation because we need professionals for the well-being of our country. Economically, politically, power will only destroy the country. All right, well, I am joined by our two guests in studio. I've got Utatu Laibon Mabasa. I'm also joined by video link by political analyst Utatu Mbeki. Mr. Mbeki, perhaps you can wrap the show for us. You know, one of the responses to our question is that we need the kind of leadership that will effect the change in this country. Your thoughts?
Well, we do have a leadership and a party that's elected by the people of South Africa. So I think the notion that we have some hypothetical messiah going to save us, the government that we have in South Africa has been elected by the people of South Africa, by the voters. Now, whether it is performing well or performing badly is another matter. If we don't like the way it's performing, then we elect another government in 2024. But there is no abstract leader that is going to save South Africa. All our leaders have to be elected. We're a democratic country.
All roads lead to 2024. Mr. Mbeki, thank you so much for your time and for joining us here on Unfiltered. We really do appreciate it. Mr. Mabaso, thank you so much. You've been a fantastic guest answering the question, of course, what will it take for political power to translate to economic emancipation? Thank you so much for your time. That's all the time we have right here on Unfiltered with me, Unathi Bhagyashe. Until next time.